I never thought I'd be the kind of man to talk about feelings on the internet. For most of my life, I believed control was everything. Control of emotions, of people, of outcomes. But funny thing about control, it's an illusion that shatters the second you realize people don't play by your rules. Back then, I wasn't President Vladimir Putin. I was just a guy trying to prove himself in a world that didn't care. Leningrad was a tough place. Cold streets, colder people. You learned to fight or to vanish. I chose to fight. I joined the KGB because I thought loyalty meant something. I thought service to the state was the same as love for something bigger than yourself. Turns out, both love and loyalty are dangerous when you give them to the wrong people. I met Ludmila through mutual friends. She was sharp, funny, and had this calm that balanced out my constant tension. For a while, it felt real, like maybe I could build something normal despite the chaos around me. But the first cracks started small. Missed calls, excuses, late returns. That creeping instinct you try to ignore because you want to believe someone wouldn't betray you. At work, betrayal was expected. In love, it was devastating. I remember one night. I came home after a long day, my hands still shaking from an operation that almost went wrong. She was on the phone, whispering, and when she saw me, she hung up so fast it was like she'd been caught committing a crime. My gut twisted, but I said nothing. I told myself, "You're paranoid. You've seen too much." But deep down, I already knew. That's the part they don't tell you about power. It doesn't protect you from pain. In fact, it makes it worse because you think you should have seen it coming. You know that feeling when something is wrong, but you can't quite put your finger on it? It's like walking into a room that looks fine, but the air feels off. That's how it started for me. Ludmila became distant, not in an obvious way, but subtle enough to make me question my sanity. She laughed less, spoke less, and when she did, it was always about how tired she was or how much pressure I was under. It felt rehearsed, controlled, like she was managing me instead of loving me. At first, I brushed it off. I buried myself in work, reports, surveillance, endless meetings. That's the thing about the KGB, it rewards distraction. When your personal life burns down, you throw yourself into duty, and no one ever asks why you stopped smiling. But even there, the whispers started. A friend from the agency, someone I trusted, told me he'd seen her with another man. "Could be nothing," he said, "but you should know." I remember feeling two emotions at once, anger and relief. Anger because the betrayal confirmed my worst fear. Relief because I wasn't crazy after all. So I did what I was trained to do. I started watching. Quietly, patiently, not as a husband, but as an investigator. I checked phone logs, noticed patterns, and tracked movements. Every piece of data painted the same picture. The person I shared a home with was living a double life. I confronted her one night, calmly, like I was interrogating a suspect. She denied everything, of course. Tears, drama, the whole act. But the eyes, they gave her away. The guilt in them wasn't for what she did, but for being caught. I wanted to shout, to rage. But instead, I felt nothing, just cold. Because when you've built your life on control and someone shatters it from the inside, there's nothing left to hold on to. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat in the dark and realized that no matter how much power you have, you can't command love, and you sure as hell can't order loyalty. The days after that confrontation felt like walking through fog. You see shapes, but you can't trust what's real. Every sound in the apartment felt too loud. The kettle boiling, the door clicking shut, even her footsteps. I couldn't look at her without feeling a storm crawl up my spine. But I didn't explode. That's not my way. Instead, I went silent. Completely. Silence can be more powerful than shouting. It unnerves people. It makes them fill in the gaps with their own guilt. And for a while, I watched her crumble under it. She'd try to talk, to explain, but every word sounded like a cover story. I'd just nod, expressionless, like I was reading an interrogation report. Still, even as I held my composure, something inside me was cracking. I'd been betrayed before, by colleagues, by superiors, but this felt different. This was someone I chose. Someone I trusted with my unguarded side, the part of me that wasn't steel or strategy. And she turned that trust into a weapon. The KGB taught me how to detect lies, manipulate outcomes, and anticipate threats. But they never taught me how to stop feeling. And that's what made it unbearable. The mix of rage, heartbreak, and humiliation, all swirling under the surface like a storm I couldn't control. I started drinking more. Not much, but enough to numb the edge. Late nights staring at nothing, remembering every moment that now felt fake. Every laugh, every promise, every touch that probably meant nothing. One night, she tried to touch my arm, just lightly, and I flinched. It was like my body rejected her automatically. She froze, realizing whatever we had was gone. I didn't need to say it. The silence said everything. That's when I understood something terrifying. You can lose your country, your position, even your freedom, and still survive. But losing trust? That kills a part of you that never grows back. Revenge is a strange thing. It doesn't whisper, it seduces. It tells you that balance can be restored if you just hurt back hard enough. And when you've built your whole life around control and order, as I had, the idea of justice starts to sound like revenge with a uniform. At first, I told myself I wasn't going to do anything. I'd just move on, focus on work, keep things professional. But every time I saw her, every fake smile, every polite word, it scraped against something raw inside me. One night, I got a call from a contact who confirmed what I already knew. The other man wasn't just some stranger. He was someone in my own circles, a mid-level bureaucrat who'd been getting too close, professionally and otherwise. That detail, it flipped a switch. I remember sitting at my desk, staring at the phone, thinking about how easy it would be to make him disappear. A word here, a signature there, and poof, he'd be gone. The system had a way of swallowing people without leaving a trace. And the thought tempted me more than I'd like to admit. But then, something stopped me. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was fear of becoming the very thing I hated. Or maybe it was the realization that revenge wouldn't fix anything. It would just feed the part of me that already felt poisoned. So instead, I did something worse. I stayed. I stayed in that apartment, with that silence, pretending everything was fine while my soul eroded piece by piece. That's the cruel part about betrayal. Sometimes you don't strike back with violence. You strike back by enduring it, convincing yourself you're strong, when really, you're just rotting quietly. The anger didn't fade. It just transformed into discipline, into ambition, into this cold determination to never be vulnerable again. And that's when something inside me changed permanently. I stopped believing in love. I started believing in leverage. There's this point after heartbreak when the sadness burns itself out, and what's left is something harder: focus. That's where I landed. I started waking up earlier, training more, working longer hours. The apartment stopped feeling like a home and became more like a base of operations. Ludmilla barely spoke, and when she did, it was about meaningless things: the weather, groceries, relatives. It was almost pathetic watching her try to patch up a ship that had already sunk. But instead of breaking down, I built up. Every ounce of pain became fuel. Every memory of her betrayal became a reason to outwork everyone around me. If I couldn't trust love, I trust discipline. If I couldn't control people, I control outcomes. And slowly, it started to pay off. My superiors noticed. I was the one who didn't complain, didn't falter, didn't get emotional. They liked that. The system always rewards those who appear unshakable. I began to understand something most people never do. Emotions are currency. And if you know how to hide yours, you can buy almost anything. But behind all that success, I was hollow. Nights were quiet, but not peaceful. I'd sit alone, drinking tea that always went cold before I finished it, and replay the betrayal in my head like an old surveillance tape. I wasn't angry anymore. I was numb. That numbness became my new armor. It made decisions easier, made people easier to read. When you don't feel deeply, you see everything clearly. And clarity? That's addictive. The truth is, betrayal didn't destroy me. It refined me. It stripped away whatever softness I had left and left something sharper behind. Still, I sometimes caught myself wondering, if I hadn't been betrayed, would I have become the man I did? Or was that darkness always waiting, and she just lit the fuse? Either way, I knew one thing for sure. I'd never let anyone get close enough to wound me like that again. After that turning point, my life became one long mission. Every decision, every alliance, every move, it all had purpose. People called it discipline, but in reality, it was survival. I'd learned what happens when you let feelings drive you, and I wasn't going to repeat that mistake. In the service, loyalty is everything. Or at least that's what they tell you. But once you've seen the way people lie with a straight face, at home, at work, everywhere, you start to understand that loyalty is just another currency, like power or fear. So, I started playing the game differently. While others competed for approval, I focused on control, quiet influence, observation, patience. I listened more than I spoke. I let others reveal themselves. And when they did, I made sure I knew what to do with that information. People started to notice. Promotions came faster. My name began circulating in rooms I'd never been invited into before. It should have felt good, but it didn't. Success felt empty without someone to share it with. Yet, even that thought made me angry, because sharing meant trusting, and I wasn't built for that anymore. Ludmila stayed, physically at least. But emotionally, we were strangers sharing walls. Sometimes she'd try to reach out, maybe out of guilt, maybe habit. I'd respond politely, mechanically. The warmth was gone. What was left between us was just image. It's funny, the same skills that helped me survive betrayal also made me perfect for politics. You learn to smile when you don't mean it, to praise people you don't respect, to make peace with enemies while sharpening your knife behind your back. But that kind of life has a cost. You stop laughing naturally. You start analyzing joy instead of feeling it. You stop living and start performing. I told myself it was worth it. That pain had made me strong. But some nights, when the world was quiet and there was no one left to impress, I'd look at my reflection and think, strength shouldn't have to feel this lonely. The higher I climbed, the less I recognized myself. I used to think power would fill the emptiness, that achievement would drown out everything I'd lost. But the truth? Power doesn't replace love, it only distracts you from missing it. By then, I was deep in the political system. People respected me, feared me even, but no one knew me. And honestly, that was the way I wanted it. When you let people know you, they find ways to use it against you. I'd learned that the hard way. The strange thing is, people think betrayal makes you cautious. It doesn't. It makes you ruthless. Because once you've been hurt like that, you start playing life like a chess game where every piece can turn on you. And I became very good at chess. Ludmila and I still appeared together in public. Smiles for cameras, small talk for the press. The world thought we were fine, a strong couple, a disciplined man and his loyal wife. But behind the scenes, we lived in different worlds. She had her routines, her friends, her quiet sadness. I had meetings, late nights, and the endless noise of ambition. Sometimes, I'd catch her looking at me across the dinner table, not angry, just tired. Like she knew the man she married was long gone, replaced by someone colder, harder, untouchable. And she was right. The betrayal had taught me the most dangerous lesson of all. Never give anyone the power to break you. But that also meant never letting anyone touch you, not emotionally, not even spiritually. I didn't realize then how much of myself I was cutting away to stay strong. People around me started to say I had presence, that when I entered a room, it changed the atmosphere. What they didn't understand was that it wasn't charisma, it was absence. The absence of warmth, the absence of fear, the absence of everything that made me human. I thought I'd won, but in truth, I was just becoming a ghost that everyone could see, but no one could reach. There's a moment in every man's life when he realizes he's not protecting himself anymore. He's trapped himself. For me, that moment didn't come in a cell or an office. It came one night, alone in a house that felt more like a museum than a home. The silence was heavy, but not peaceful. I had everything I'd once thought mattered: influence, respect, control, yet I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling back to that one truth. I'd built my entire empire on distrust. And it worked. But it also meant there was no one left I could trust, even if I wanted to. The irony didn't escape me. The same instincts that saved me from betrayal were now isolating me completely. Every friendship felt strategic. Every compliment sounded rehearsed. Every hand I shook felt like a move in a game that never ended. Ludmila had grown quiet too. We spoke only when necessary, and when we did, it was like two diplomats negotiating a ceasefire neither of us believed in. Sometimes I'd see her sitting by the window, staring at nothing for hours. I wondered what she thought about, whether she regretted the affair, whether she missed the man I used to be, or whether she'd simply stopped caring. I wanted to ask. I never did. Instead, I poured myself deeper into work. The public saw a man who never hesitated, never faltered, never blinked. They called me decisive, disciplined, dangerous, and maybe I was all those things. But underneath that armor was a truth I'd never admit publicly. I was lonely beyond measure. That loneliness hardened me even more. I began to mistake fear for respect, compliance for loyalty, and silence for peace. And once you start confusing those things, you stop being a man. You become an institution. Cold, predictable, eternal. Sometimes I'd think about that first night, the one when I caught her whispering on the phone. It felt like a lifetime ago. Maybe it was. That one moment had changed the entire trajectory of my life, carving me into something else. Something I wasn't sure I liked, but couldn't undo. I had become untouchable. But untouchable is just another word for alone. People talk about emotional strength like it's a prize, like the goal in life is to stop caring, stop hurting, stop feeling. But they never tell you what comes after that. For me, it was emptiness. Deep, echoing emptiness. By then, I was surrounded by people, advisors, officers, diplomats, entire rooms filled with those who smiled when I entered. Yet somehow, I'd never felt lonelier. Everyone wanted something. Every word was measured. Every gesture was political. No one dared to speak to me as a man, only as a symbol. And maybe that's what I wanted all along, to be untouchable. But I hadn't realized that when you make yourself untouchable, you also make yourself unreachable. Sometimes I'd see couples in public, holding hands, laughing, sharing small, stupid moments. Things I used to think were meaningless. But now, those moments hit harder than any loss in politics. Because those were things power couldn't buy. Ludmila and I finally stopped pretending. We lived separate lives under the same roof for a while, until one day, it was over. Quietly. No shouting, no accusations, just an unspoken agreement that whatever love had existed had died long ago. I didn't fight it. I didn't even feel relief. Just neutrality. And that scared me more than anything. Because when betrayal first broke me, I felt everything. Rage, humiliation, sorrow. But now, nothing. It was like my heart had shut down to avoid ever being tricked again. People called it emotional discipline. I called it emotional death. That's the hidden cost of betrayal no one talks about. It doesn't just make you distrust others. It teaches you to distrust yourself. Every emotion feels suspicious, every attachment dangerous. You start asking, what's their angle? Even when someone's just being kind. One night, as I sat in silence, I realized something I'll never forget. Betrayal didn't destroy me all at once. It replaced me piece by piece, until there was nothing left of the man who once believed in love, loyalty, or even peace. All that remained was control. And control is the loneliest god to serve. At some point, control stops feeling like strength and starts feeling like a cage you built yourself. I had everything: status, recognition, a place in history. But inside, there was this growing question that haunted me more than anything else. What for? When I was younger, I thought power was the answer to everything. That if you could make people obey, if you could shape the world around you, you'd finally be safe. But safety isn't the same as peace. You can control a room full of people and still lose the battle inside your own head. There were moments, rare ones, when that truth slipped through. A quiet car ride, a silent morning before the day began. I'd look out at the city and realize that no one really knew me anymore. Not my colleagues, not the people who cheered or feared me, not even the woman who used to share my life. I had turned into a role instead of a person. I tried to fill the silence with work. More meetings, more plans, more achievements. Every time something was accomplished, I'd feel a spark of satisfaction, but it vanished quickly. It was never enough. Because power is addictive. You keep reaching for more, hoping it will fill the void, but it only widens it. Some nights, I'd look at the old photo albums, smiles that didn't look forced, simpler times, back when I still believed that being right and being happy could coexist. I closed those albums fast. Nostalgia felt too much like weakness. That's when I realized betrayal hadn't just changed me, it had rewritten my purpose. I stopped chasing love or trust or even happiness. I started chasing legacy. Because legacy doesn't leave you. It doesn't cheat or lie or forget your name. It stays. But the thing about legacy, it can't hold you when the room goes quiet. It can't tell you it's proud of you. It just sits there, cold, heavy, and eternal. So I convinced myself it was enough. That if I couldn't be loved, at least I'd be remembered. Legacy. Funny word. Everyone wants it, everyone worships it, but no one warns you that it can feel like a curse. By now, I had achieved what many thought impossible. Influence, respect, fear, all in equal measure. The world bowed in small ways, and some in larger ways. But the higher you climb, the lonelier the ledge becomes. I'd traded love for control, warmth for respect, closeness for influence. And every day, that trade felt heavier. I started noticing things I'd once ignored. The silence in my office, the lack of real friends, the absence of laughter that wasn't forced or calculated. Ludmilla was gone, and with her, any chance of feeling a part of someone else's life again. The betrayal that had hurt so much in the beginning had turned into a blueprint for isolation. Sometimes I wondered if it had all been worth it. Was power enough to replace human connection? Could legacy really fill the hollow space where love once lived? I didn't have an answer. I still don't. And yet, I kept going. Because that's what I do. I move forward. I build. I control. Even if it costs what's left of me. But the truth is, the betrayal that once taught me discipline had now become a chain. A constant reminder that trusting anyone is a risk, that opening yourself up is weakness, and that even the strongest walls can't shield you from loneliness. I realized something then, staring at the empty office late one night. You can't undo the past. You can't unlearn betrayal. You can't bring back the people who left, the chances that were lost, or the feelings that faded. All you can do is decide how to live with what's left. For me, what's left is control, strategy, and the cold satisfaction of power. But sometimes, just sometimes, I catch a glimpse of what might have been, a life with trust, with warmth, with connection, and it stings sharper than any enemy's blade. By this point, I had everything a man could want on paper: influence, status, fear, and legacy in the making. Yet, ironically, I was surrounded by ghosts. People moved around me, smiled at me, flattered me, even feared me, but none of them were real. None of them knew me, and none of them cared. Even the few people I thought I could trust were there because it served them, not because of loyalty. I started noticing how empty every conversation felt, how transactional every interaction had become. The betrayal years ago had taught me to read people like open books, and what I saw now was a world full of agendas, masks, and subtle manipulations. Sometimes, when I walked through Moscow streets, I'd see couples holding hands, children laughing, friends sharing small jokes, and a quiet ache would hit me. I didn't feel jealousy. Not exactly. Just the loss. Loss of the possibility that things could have been different, simpler, warmer, human. Ludmilla had faded completely from my life. Our marriage ended without fanfare, almost unnoticed. And yet, a part of me still remembered her, the calm she brought, the small kindnesses, the moments I thought were love. And that memory wasn't sweet. It was sharp, like a knife hidden under a velvet cloth. Even power, I realized, couldn't shield me from that. You can manipulate events, control people, bend systems, but you can't bend your own heart to forget. And sometimes, when I am alone, that truth stares back at me louder than any applause or fear I've earned. It's strange. Betrayal taught me discipline, strength, and ruthlessness, but it also left a shadow that no achievement could erase. A shadow that reminded me, quietly, that some wounds never heal. After years of power, betrayal, and isolation, I finally started thinking about what it all meant. Not in a speech or a public statement, but quietly, in the dark, when no one could see me. The first lesson is obvious, but painful. Trust wisely. I learned the hard way that giving your heart, or even just your loyalty, to the wrong person can change your entire life. Some people will take what you give and use it against you. Some betray not out of malice, but because they simply cannot help themselves. And some betray for power, for convenience, for selfish reasons. Recognizing the difference is the first step to protecting yourself. Second lesson, power is not a replacement for connection. I built empires, climbed ladders, shaped policies, and influenced nations. But none of that fills the spaces left by lost trust and lost love. You can be feared, respected, and admired, and still be utterly alone. Third lesson, anger and revenge are traps. I almost let the urge to retaliate destroy me before I even reached my goals. Instead, I chose patience and strategy. That decision saved me professionally, but it didn't save me emotionally. Sometimes the best revenge is survival, but survival doesn't heal the heart. Finally, emotional armor comes at a cost. I became strong, untouchable, disciplined, but in the process, I became distant, unreachable, and cold. There's a balance between protecting yourself and cutting yourself off from life. I crossed that line. Looking back, I don't think I'd change everything. The lessons shaped me, gave me focus, and forced me to see the world clearly. But I understand now why people say power and love rarely coexist. Because true connection requires vulnerability, and vulnerability is the one thing betrayal teaches you to fear. After everything, I realized that life doesn't pause for reflection. You can spend years thinking about what went wrong, but eventually, you have to decide how to live with it. I chose a path that prioritized control, strategy, and emotional boundaries, because I knew I could never risk being blindsided again. I stopped looking for someone to complete me. Instead, I focused on what I could influence: decisions, outcomes, events. I built systems, cultivated loyalty selectively, and made sure every alliance served a purpose. It wasn't love, and it wasn't warmth, but it was safe. And in the world I had chosen, safety became a kind of freedom. Yet, I also learned to recognize the small things that still mattered: quiet moments, reliable colleagues, personal discipline. I began to find satisfaction in achievements and in the subtle victories of life that don't involve other people. It's not happiness, not in the way everyone imagines it, but it's something that keeps the shadows at bay. I didn't become cold by accident. Betrayal made me this way, but I learned to embrace it without letting it completely consume me. I've built walls, yes, but I also learned which battles are worth fighting and which are better left alone. That's how I survive now. That's how I move forward. And, strangely enough, that's where peace begins, not in trusting blindly, but in trusting yourself enough to walk forward, even after everything has tried to break you. Looking back, it's clear that betrayal was the turning point of my life. It didn't just hurt me, it reshaped me, redefined my priorities, and forced me to see the world in ways I never wanted to. What started as heartbreak became a blueprint for survival, and survival became a life built on control, strategy, and calculated distance. I won't pretend it didn't cost me. It took warmth, trust, and the ability to connect with others freely. It took parts of me I may never get back, but it also gave me clarity, focus, and an understanding of human nature that few ever learn. So here's my advice to anyone facing betrayal, whether in love, friendship, or business. Feel it fully, then decide your path. Rage, sadness, confusion, all are natural. Don't suppress them, but don't let them define your actions either. Protect yourself, but don't become unreachable. Emotional armor is necessary, but too much cuts you off from what makes life meaningful. Use lessons, not grudges. Let betrayal teach you, guide you, sharpen your instincts, but don't let it turn you into someone you'll regret being. Focus on what you can control. You can't rewrite the past, and you can't make everyone loyal. But you can shape your choices, your responses, and your path forward. Betrayal changes you, sometimes forever, but it doesn't have to destroy you. You can emerge stronger, wiser, and more deliberate, even if some parts of your heart remain forever cautious. And that's how I survive. That's how I move forward. That's how I've learned to live in a world where trust is fragile, power is intoxicating, and the past always lingers, quietly, patiently, reminding you of what you've lost and what you've gained.